everyone's going back to 1990s because that was the time when encounters were happening. Those 70s in Mumbai was, the Haji Mastan and the smugglers, those movies like
Yes,
Levi came, the angry young
yes.
man fighting against the system. 90s, saw the cop wars, the encounter specialists.
The book is set in the 90s, so that is present day for the book. Mumbai witnessed the rise of the underworld in a very visible manner. What happened in 91 was the liberalization. We saw a lot change. I still remember that day when my cousins went down to the store and we saw bottles of Pepsi lying there, and we were like, wow, now we get Pepsi here. We don't have to wait for those cans to arrive from abroad.
And the Nike shoes and the Levi jeans.
Exactly. It took a stab or it took a hit on the parallel economy, and smuggling started suffering. And with this rise in economic prosperity and real estate was booming in Mumbai, films were booming in Mumbai, liberalization had made a big impact on the overall economy. Extortion started rising. Reaction has an equal and opposite reaction.
So, Vivek, firstly, before we start talking about Itarsi Express, I want to ask you about your life, your journey. It's across continents and across careers,
Mhm,
from the
mhm.
army, an advertising and marketing communications professional, and now a novelist. So, have these very different disciplines somewhere come together and given us Itarsi Express?
Absolutely. This book is I would say it's a culmination of my passions, which is for history, for crime in Mumbai, even for weapons. So my entire passions and my lived experiences. Now, lived experiences across India, UAE, which is Dubai, and then Canada over a period of about 25 years has given me such a lot of stories and so much of food for thought that I thought it all had to come together.
Mm-hmm.
And across all these journeys and all these geographies and cultures, I realized that events and history repeat themselves, and that is one undercurrent which you will find in this book.
And that undercurrent we do because 1990, because whether it's film, whether it's television, whether it's the OTT space, everyone's going back to 1990s because that was the time when encounters were happening. While the 80s, 70s, 70, I grew up I was very young, though, 70s in Mumbai was, the Haji Mastan and the smugglers, those movies like
Yes,
Diwar came, the angry young
yes.
man fighting against the system. 90s saw the cop wars, the encounter specialists. So
Mhm.
this also goes back in history, 1800s, because that was the time when we were under the colonial rule, because as they say, us time ka bhi thaggiri used to happen. So what was
Mhm.
it like blend, the coming together of these two worlds? Because 1990s going back 1800, what was like that? What was it like?
Mhm. In all honesty, Pooja, that was the most stimulating part for me while writing this book in terms of going back and forth in time. The book is set in the 90s, so that is present day for the book.
Hmm.
But then the 90s for someone like me again is those were like the wonder years of my life. I was growing up in Mumbai. It was a very different time away from digital devices and electronics, and vacations and holidays truly meant boys going out in a ground somewhere and hitting a ball all day long. That was also the time when Mumbai witnessed the rise of the underworld in a very visible manner.
Yes.
So the underworld, to a great extent, was built on smuggling, extortion, yes, to some extent, but smuggling and a lot of other areas such as bootlegging and drugs, etc., were a smaller part of it. What happened in 91 was the liberalization. We saw a lot change. I still remember that day when my cousins went down to the store and we saw bottles of Pepsi lying there, and we were like, wow, now we get Pepsi here. We don't have to wait for those cans to arrive from abroad.
And the
Um,
Nike shoes and the Levi jeans.
and exactly, so they were available,
And Wrigley's.
exactly. So all of those brands became a part of our lives. Now, what that also did was that it took a stab, or it took a hit on the parallel economy, and smuggling started suffering.
Yeah.
And with this rise in economic prosperity, and real estate was booming in Mumbai, films were booming in Mumbai, liberalization had made a big impact on the overall economy. Extortion started rising. And it started off in a small way, and suddenly every second ruffian realized that there is money to be made. All you have to do is to procure a Dubai SIM from Hirapanna or somewhere at
Yeah, I
Musafir
know, of
Khana,
course. Or Palika
right?
Bazaar here
You
in Delhi.
or Palika Bazaar, you procure a UAE SIM or a Middle East SIM, and you place a call to someone asking for money, and people could be scared enough to just shell it out.
Yeah.
Now, this was an evolution of crime, and this reached such pandemic levels that the administration had to crack down on it. And there was a breed of cops who rose to the challenge, and that's nature. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And in this case, that came up in the form of the encounter specialists, which as we know, what happened between say 92, 93 and 2005. To put it mildly, there were a lot of shots fired. The shootout at Lokhandwala, which became the encounter, which turned into a movie,
Yeah.
itself saw something approximately 1,500 rounds fired over 3 hours or so, and that was one incident,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot transpired in that decade. Um, and for a child who was growing up at that time, seeing all of this in the tabloids, hearing it, having that friend whose father is a senior cop, hearing behind the scenes stuff from him. And I still remember being so amazed that, hey, but this wasn't mentioned in the newspaper yesterday. And he said, no, but that's really what happened. Now, I don't know how much of it was true, how much of it was a 17-year-old boy sort of exaggerating stuff, but it left its mark on me. And I distinctly remember, even when I was in the academy, when I was in the army, a part of me felt that after I served 5 years, I must try and join the IPS and then continue to serve the nation in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's my little connection with the 90s and the crime which is featured in this book. But again, as I was saying, crime evolves. This was an evolution which we saw. Um, and crime in the 17th and 1800s had its own evolutionary journey. And that's what I really enjoyed, sort of going back and forth in time, and taking the reader along for the ride.
Awesome. And it's very interesting. Before we discuss the characters, it's also rooted, I mean, the train, now the local trains or the train tracks actually are the vein of Mumbai, it's
Hmm.
like it's the
Hmm.
vein of that city. So what was it about, setting it alongside? Because the tracks are also a very significant character in the narrative, as I would say.
Hmm.
What was that thing about the railways?
Absolutely. Local trains, of course, are a part of Mumbai as much as, say, Marine Drive is. They make Mumbai. Just yesterday, I saw a photograph online that the Harbour Line trains are delayed, and the shot was taken from the top of the platform, and you could see thousands of people there. And I realized, wow, some things never change. The trains truly are the lifeline of Mumbai. The trains I reference in this case, of course, are the long distance trains. But what uh, really inspired me to set this on a train was the fact that around the 90s, early 90s, before mobile phones, before technology, before laptops, once you got onto a train, you were truly cut off from the world. If it's an overnight train,
Yeah.
and once it leaves the platform, 3, 4 hours later, you would be somewhere in the vast hinterland of India in a metallic container, cut off from the rest of the world. It's you and people around you. And then what happens on a train, you could say, in many cases, stays on a train,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And that is what made it such a perfect setting for an almost perfect crime in my head.
Which is so true because, the train the people you meet, then they get off that station, Gwalior ka station aaya, Jhansi aaya, because I remember the Delhi to Mumbai thing. And it's
Hmm.
interesting because you meet people, their stories exchanged, and yeah, what happens on the train stays on the train. And we've often had these thrillers along, on the train, whether it's the murder on the Orient Express and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yes.
Yeah, so I
Hmm.
mean, they make for very riveting news stories, and the cut, 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 the tracks changing and
Yeah.
nostalgia. So, but also it's Inspector ACP Patil, one time encounter specialist, now behind the desk, hating every moment. But also, I heard you say that these were also people that you had met. And I'm sure as a writer,
Hmm.
you draw because they say if you are a writer, you never know what aspect of someone's personality that person is creating. So, I mean, were these someone you had observed that when this character came about, like as you mentioned, your friend's father was in the police force? Was it someone that had he done this, if he had done this, because you're always thinking.
So the one of the key characters in this book,
Yeah,
which I can't really give away too much,
yeah,
it would be too much of a spoiler.
yeah, yeah.
But
Please.
that character came to me in a dream,
Oh,
and I just remember waking up the next morning so inspired that I discussed it with my wife, and I called up my sister and I told her, "Listen, I think I have a good story." And then I started sort of weaving the rest around that character. But as far as the inspector is concerned, that really is a culmination, of course, of knowing someone's parent who was in the police force and hearing a lot from them, stuff which never made it to the newspapers. But then it was also the entire 90s era, Pooja. Just imagine tabloids, midday used to be big. There used to be a newspaper called the Blitz. There
of
was the
course I
Mumbai
remember the
Eye,
Blitz. Of course I remember the
right?
Blitz.
Afternoon Dispatch in Korea. Every 2 or 3 days, there would be a front page news about Inspector Vijay Salaskar guns down so and so, or Daya Nayak takes out someone from so and so gang, right? Now, in that frame of time, 93 to 2005, there were approximately 600 people, 600 gangsters or individuals eliminated in encounters. That's about at least 50 encounters a year where somebody, a criminal, was shot, right? 4 or 5 a month. Now, can you imagine how much of exposure a 14, 15, 16-year-old got to all of that happening around them? And then hearing about stuff from friends, fathers who were cops. Of course, again, living close to in Worli, there is on the Worli Hill, there is a police camp. So I would go there for swimming. You would see all these people going about their routines, and you realize, wow, it takes a lot to keep order in a city. And there always was that admiration for the police force and their capacity to try and give so much, even without the best equipment, or sometimes without even the correct information.
Yeah.
Case in point, the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. So that's what sort of inspired me to weave this narrative around Inspector Patil and how he is this encounter specialist for whom one wrong turn results in him being shunted off to a relatively less consequential or to a relatively inconsequential posting in his head.
Yeah.
And that really forms the basis of this character's, I would say, motivation to crack that one solid case and get back to what he always liked doing.
And also Mumbai, it's always been, I would say, it's that lucrative ground. I mean, it's like, I mean, you call it the maximum city. The city never sleeps, and whatever sudden it has a buzz. It's constantly alive. The
Yes.
city really doesn't
Hmm.
sleep. And as I was speaking to someone who said this is also in Hindi, told me, "ये शहर सब कुछ सिखा देता है to
Hmm.
anyone." But every day there is somebody on that train to Mumbai, looking for
Hmm.
opportunities. But also it is also this thriving ground for storytellers. All stories.
Hmm.
It's Mumbai. What do you think is that huge psychological draw? Like Mumbai, it's a very prominent character. It's like a character in itself.
Hmm. So when they call Mumbai Maya Nagari,
Yeah.
it truly it lives up to its name because the deal with the Maya Nagari is it has its ability not just to draw you in, but then to keep you there with the promise of what may lie ahead,
Yeah.
right? For people living in Mumbai, the Maya Nagari may be somewhere else. But for a big part of India, this is that city which stands for opportunities. It used to, and I don't know to what extent it does, it would stand for Bollywood and a certain kind of glamour. It would stand for these landmarks, such as I would say a Marine Drive or a Sea Link or the coastal road which runs under the sea today. There's a lot in the city which truly makes it aspirational for the rest of India. And then, of course, there are countless opportunities at every level which you can imagine, right from the grassroots jobs and jobs which really keep life convenient for all of us, right down to executive and CEO levels. There are opportunities everywhere. And that's truly what makes Mumbai that Mayanagri which it is. And then it attracts all sorts of people, including the wrong kind of folks.
That's what's interesting about Mumbai because there you have the glamour, the bling. On the other hand, it's also very scarred, but it continues,
Yeah.
it perseveres. And I would
Mhm.
say it's one of the most safest cities because you could be at 2 a.m., it's all good. You have no idea what would be happening, like the underbelly of Mumbai, as you've showcased here. But also,
Mhm.
these days, if you've seen whether it's Bollywood, whether it's the OTT space, as we said, they're all looking back at the 90s. If you have Once Upon a Time in Mumbai, then on the other hand,
Yeah.
you shoot out a Lokhandwala, and now a film called Oh Romeo's Release, which is again goes back, gangsters.
Oh, this I have to see.
Yeah, but I really don't know how it's doing. So, but what do you
Mhm.
think that crime and psychological thrillers continue to dominate Bollywood storytelling and the OTT platforms? What is basically the draw for filmmakers and storytellers like you? Because tomorrow this might be an OTT series.
Fingers crossed. So 90s is a significant period because it was the period of flux. A lot of change took place, and such tumultuous periods really result in characters who are interesting, characters and personalities who are interesting and who stand out because they rise to the challenges of these transitional phases. It was a similar story in 1800s India.
Yeah.
Again, a period of great transition, a period of flux, or say 1757, when the Battle of Plassey took place, right up until 1857 to the first War of Independence. There was so much of change in India. Empires rose and fell, and then until there was one dominant power which sort of held all of India. There were a lot of interesting personalities and characters who came up and who stand out. So that's one reason why I would say people keep going back to the 90s. As far as the fascination with crime is concerned, I just think it's the human need for resolution. And that's the first part. See, this need for resolution, if it is tapped into well enough, can result in very interesting narratives and stories, whether it's a love story, or in my case, whether it's a crime thriller. Now, where I find crime thrillers have an advantage, an unfair advantage almost, is that they can take you to the edge of thrill, and they can keep you their setup, and they're very constructed such that it can keep you guessing. And that I feel is the reason why there is so much of content being created around it. If you and I'm sure you've noticed this, but true crime content is popular like never before.
Yeah, very
We
true.
may know of a crime, we know exactly what happened. But when it comes on OTT, we will sit down and watch that entire thing again. And then, of course, there are a lot of talented creators and filmmakers out there who bring their own perspectives and uh, POVs from people who you never heard of when you were reading this case online or on the newspaper. So I just think it's this fascination for the human need for resolution, which makes crime so interesting for us because I think the whodunit lure is very, very strong.
Absolutely. But also, do you think with the OTT space, because earlier people were grumbling about the fact, oh, the stories are so dark, the characters are so dark. But guess what? They're the ones getting the maximum views. Whether it was Sacred Games,
Oh, yes.
on Netflix, then you have Patal Lok, which is not necessarily set in Mumbai, but Sacred Games was like the heart of Mumbai. So, do you think they have actually changed the way thrillers are now being written, in terms of pacing, character depth and realism? Because now you have Kora, because now we are going into different cities. Like Kora is the
Hmm.
story of Punjab. It
Hmm.
might show you the cops, but it actually shows you the veins of Punjab. So, but do you think
Hmm.
OTT has also changed the dynamics?
I would say so.
Yeah,
Korra is on my watch list starting tonight.
it's
And
very good.
it's the and see season one we binge watched. I hope the same happens for season two. It's just this. It's a different flavor and a different perspective. So Patal Lok, for example, was set in Delhi, and then the season two was set in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So what's really happening is that now creators are exploring different angles of crime. We've seen crime in Mumbai. Now, to one up what's already created, you need to do a damn good job, right? You need to take it to another level. You need to either have an angle at suspense or mystery, which no one's ever thought of before. And that's where the challenge really lies. But then if you explore what crime or wrongdoing might be in the Northeast, where the dynamics are totally different, where there are a lot of ethnic and cultural factors also which come into play, right? Uh, that sort of gives I wouldn't say an easier, but I would say it gives a fresh canvas for the story writers and for the directors to really weave the narratives around. If you look at the series, there was another very interesting series where starring Ravina Tandon, set in
Aranyak. Aranyak?
Aranyak.
Oh, yeah, set in the
Absolutely,
forest.
Aranyak.
Yeah.
Set in Himachal. Wow. I when I sat down to view that, and my family had lived in Simla for a number of years after the partition,
Hmm.
I felt like I was there. So it's this ability now to extract this essence of, the need for resolution and for crimes which have a local flavor. So Aranyak was really about legends and, I would say the mysteries in the hills, and then how that translated to a crime which was being committed not by a legend, but by actual human beings,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So, in that sense, I just feel there are such fresh takes because that's the need of the hour.
Absolutely. And also, if I was to ask you now, as a writer, if you could teleport yourself at a time and space in, say, Mumbai, which
Mhm.
space would you want, and which is that one character you would really want to meet and have a conversation with?
This is such an interesting question because Mumbai has such a rich and I would say colorful past. I would have an entire cast of characters whom I would like to go back in time and meet. But given a choice, I would like to see myself transported back to the late 1600s or early 1700s when Mumbai was seven islands and have a meeting with one of the pirates who would operate in the Arabian Sea.
Wow.
And the reason for that fascination is that there was an entire, I would say, fleet or a big bunch of pirate vessels in the Arabian Sea, which were British. They weren't owned by the East India Company, but they were operating with the knowledge of the East India Company. Uh, and of course, the company was very selective in whom it acted against. So I would be quite curious to meet them and have a conversation and figure out what they're all about and how much the East India Company really knew about their operations or was perhaps involved with them.
Interesting. I'm sure they will. I'm sure. These conspiracy theories, because it's now sudden interest. And it's so interesting that I love books and I love books in the physical form because I don't like reading them on the Kindle. But today,
Hmm.
as a writer, there was a study done by The Guardian, like even in Britain, But many kids don't read. Like there was some case study about somebody trying to tap a book. It's that, I mean, they just don't know. So how do we inculcate this habit of reading? Because we are in this day and age where we are only scrolling now, micro dramas, reels have become
Hmm.
your source of entertainment. So as a
Hmm.
writer, yeah,
Hmm. What you're saying strongly resonates with me, and I just feel it's the dumbing down of intellect and human minds when I hear statements from people like, I get my news from TikTok. And I thought, no, that cannot be the truth. But it is very often the truth. So a lot has to be done towards getting kids interested in reading from a very young age. That's something I've observed here in Toronto where I live, that you have the Toronto Public Library, which literally has dozens of branches all over the city, which offer a space not just to go and pick up books, but to sit down, study, read, browse, as well as take part in talks by authors, talks on, say, knowing your wines, talks on various subjects, right? And for someone like me, it's a big magnet because the last talk I attended was by the author of this book called The Billionaire Murders, which was a very, very sensational case here in Toronto. Now, point is, if kids start, uh, if kids start getting to the library early on, there is that's the power of books. There is nothing which will stop them from loving books.
absolutely.
And whether they're reading, whether they read a hard copy or whether they pick up a Kindle and sit down and just read that. There is nothing better than that for growing the mind.
Absolutely.
And I too am a hard copy person. But what I would say about Kindles is the best part is there are no annoying pop-ups from messages or someone trying to reach you or something up on social media. You can sit and read.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. And also, my reading has come down, but I still do have two books next to my bedside table because never know when you want to. But thank you so much. So, next, what after this?
That's a very good question. What I know for sure is it would be in the crime thriller genre.
Okay.
Whether Inspector Patil takes on the same kind of crime and criminal or something else, or it's a totally different subject and story. I'm not 100% sure, but it will be a crime thriller, and it's already somewhere at the back of my head. Now I just have to start putting pen to paper and to get rolling.
Awesome. And one question I can't help asking you because we were discussing about OTT. If there was someone in Bollywood who would play Inspector Patil, who do you think would be the perfect?
I think the perfect Inspector Patil would be Manoj Bajpayee. He's such a fabulous actor, and and of course he happens to have done some excellent cop roles,
Yeah.
whether a serious cop role or whether in a lighter vein, as with Inspector Zende, which he had recently
Yeah. Yeah.
portrayed. I think he's a fabulous actor, and he would be perfect for this role. And I think the other actor who would be amazing if this ever makes it to the screen for a different role, which I will not talk about the character, would be Jaideep Ahlawat.
Where we have Family Man, yeah, the Family Man 3, they were together. We can have our own
Hmm.
version of, excellent. So, well, let's manifest that. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much, Vivek.
Thanks very much, Pooja. It's great to talk with you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much. All the very best and have a nice day ahead. Bye bye. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks. Bye.
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 Bye.